All right, welcome back once again to PRI and the main stage. And I'm going to introduce someone that a lot of you may recognize. And if you don't recognize them, you know the name. If you don't know,
You definitely know the name.
if you don't know the name, you're going to know it after. Lake Speed Jr., how are you?
I'm fantastic, Tony. I appreciate you. As a former NASCAR driver's kid, we've just been talking here recently. We met 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
We have a lot of connections that we didn't even know.
Well, we're going to talk about some of those.
Yeah.
We're going to take a little walk back. But, Lake, so let me start. You currently work with Total Seal. We had Matt Hartford up here earlier. You work on the engineering side.
Yeah, so I'm a tribologist. So tribology is a study of friction, wear, and lubrication. Mm-hmm. So, funny fact, the piston ring accounts for 40% of all engine friction. So the easiest way to reduce friction and make more horsepower,
Yep.
especially in a naturally aspirated engine, is to work on the tribology to reduce the friction in your piston ring. So that's why Matt got me on Total Seal, because we can work on coatings, we can work on honing, we can work on oil, everything you can to try to squeeze more efficiency out of the engine, which is the lifeblood of pro stock racing, right?
So your background, for you to connect with someone like, Matt Hartford, who is an accomplished driver, but of course he's, one of the owners at Total Seal.
Right.
How did that connect? How did you guys connect and introduced?
So it goes to Joe Gibbs Racing. So Joe Gibbs Racing was the first NASCAR team to begin using the diamond finished rings from Total Seal. Mm-hmm. So Mark Cronquist was the head engine builder at Joe Gibbs Racing. That was my boss, because we worked with a company called Lubrizol. We developed our own oils. And so we did all of these things to make the NASCAR engines better. And so, because I always call it, ring seal, which anybody knows, if you don't have good ring seal, if you got bad leak down, you don't make any horsepower. Mm-hmm. So you got to have good ring seal. I call it ring seal soup. It's not just the piston, it's not just the ring, it's not just the cylinder hone, it's not just the oil. They all got to work together. You go over to St. Elmo's and have a steak dinner. If you don't like the mashed potatoes or whatever, you don't have to eat them. But if you order the tomato bisque soup, buddy, either you like it or you don't.
That's right.
It's a combination. So at Gibbs, we worked really hard on making the best combination we could, because we wanted to win races and win championships. Yep. FedEx, Home Depot, M&M's never asked us how much money we spent on oil.
That's right.
Or piston rings. They didn't care. So that's how I met Matt and those guys, was that we were part of that system. What the coatings we used on the rings had to match with how we honed the blocks, with what we used for the chemistry and the oil. It all had to work together, and that's where we got started working together, and we've just carried it on, and we're doing it with now Total Seal. We can do it for everybody now.
So that's the first connection, the name you mentioned, Coach Joe Gibbs, the Super
Yes.
Bowl winning, multi-time Super Bowl winning coach, of course, synonymous with NASCAR, but also a drag racer.
Yes, sir.
And of course, he was a drag racing team owner for a lot of years. My brother Cruz drove for him. So what was it like being around a guy like Joe Gibbs? I would come to the pits to visit Cruz just to get some of that coaching wisdom. A very good guy, a very invested individual. But what was it like for you to work under a guy like Joe?
Life-changing.
Yeah.
I had a great mentor in my dad, who was obviously a very successful racer, world karting champion, NASCAR driver, won races, team owner, and all that. But Coach Gibbs, he's next level. I'm just telling you, you can see why the John Rigginses of the world and the Joe Theismanns and all this, why the Redskins won all those championships, is because there's something about Coach Gibbs that just gets a little more from you. I'll never forget. So, 2005, we were. The 11 car had just been added, so we went to the third team. So we had the FedEx car, and we had Home Depot. We had Tony Stewart, Home Depot, Bobby Labonte, 18, Interstate Batteries car. And then you got this FedEx car, and it's struggling. And we go to Charlotte. They don't even qualify. So we had this big team meeting. He's still back in coaching at the Redskins at this point, right? Mm-hmm. So he comes back to Charlotte. We have this team meeting, all 400 of us in there. And Coach comes up, and he's like, guys, I know it's tough right now. This has not been the way the seasons we wanted it to go. It's tough. But I want to tell you a story from my football career. He said the year after we won our first Super Bowl, we were terrible. And, I'd only been coaching a couple of years, and, Jack Kent Cook, who was the owner, he was pretty tough and didn't take much slack. We started off the year, we hadn't won a game in I think, the first 3 or 4 games. Had a Monday night football game against the Minnesota Vikings, who was the number 1 team in NFL, right? Undefeated.
At the time, yep.
At the time. And he said, I never gave a pregame talk. I wasn't a pep talk kind of guy before the game. So we worked all week. The guys knew what the jobs they're going to do. A pep talk ain't going to make or break the game. That was his thing. He said, but before we left the locker room, I grabbed everybody. I said, guys, we know the season hasn't started the way we want it to go for us. But we have an opportunity tonight to turn things around. All I'm asking you is leave everything you have for the Washington Redskins on that field tonight. Don't walk off that field with any regrets. And he looked across that room of 400 of us and said, guys, don't come back next week with any regrets. Whatever you have you can give for Joe Gibbs Racing, give it now.
Yep.
The guys literally went to Michigan for a test that weekend, came back, they found some stuff. We come back to Michigan 2 weeks later. I think Tony won the pole, won the race, and we go on to win the championship that year. I mean, turned the whole thing around. It was one of those things. When he finished talking, we were all like, you want to run out and tackle somebody. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And that's just a little snapshot of what Coach Gibbs was like.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Lake, for you, of course, growing up around your dad, professional racer, a very accomplished professional racer, was there any desire for you to get in a go-kart at a young age, any type of race car?
I got my first go-kart when I was 4. So I had a very long 10-year career then when I was 14. It was different in NASCAR back then. We didn't have the ability to. When my dad raced full time, he couldn't come with me.
Yep.
So once he started racing the full schedule, I had to make a choice, right? So I started working in the shop and realized that I really liked the engineering of the cars.
That's what I have left of fans right there.
Right, exactly, yeah. Well, that's not a bad fan to have.
But it's the best one.
That's pretty good, yeah. He's got the white hat, so it's all good.
That's right.
So I really learned that I like the engineering of the cars. Like, I would rather go to the wind tunnel.
You had a different calling.
Yeah,
Yep.
And that's where I found my passion. Wasn't on the driving side. I still go out there and race with him.
Yep.
Still faster
Can
than
I ask
me.
a little bit about your dad? I mean,
Yeah.
you said he's still, I asked what he's doing. He's still racing karts, vintage karts now.
Yeah, so he's 74 years old. He still races go-karts. He is still super fast. He's got modern karts. He goes and runs. He goes over to Dismore's track over in Newcastle, which is less than an hour from here.
We have a garage there, yeah.
And he goes out there and runs every, I think it's Father's Day weekend. They have a vintage race.
Yep.
He has a twin engine, 135cc, 2 strokes on methanol. That thing makes about 80-plus horsepower on a 300-pound go-kart, including the driver. It is wicked fast, and no one can beat him still.
Well, Lake Speed Jr., I appreciate you dropping in, saying hi, spending a little time. But the next time I'm at Newcastle with my son, I'm going to look your dad up at one of those vintage races.
You got to come do that.
Well, appreciate spending a little time with you, and hopefully we'll see you at the races soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We got a few more coming at you. Don't go away too far. Thanks.